heart attack. He's back home. He's still a struggle. I talked to Dorothy today, so please remember him in your prayers. Debbie's doing better. I'm going to have Gary come up here and make a brief, he wants to talk to us just a minute. I want to tell you about Chrysanthemum Hall. She'll be here in April, in a few weeks, and April the 28th, and she'll be here in the 29th in Weed. She'll be in Allen Road on the 28th, and she is a constitutional attorney, author, and speaker, and radio host, and she will talk to us about the Constitution, and so we hope that you can come. That'll be a great event. She speaks all over the country. We just happened, Twyla and some of the girls found that she had an opening. She's in Utah speaking. She's going to be flying back, and so they got her to come to El Paso. She's going to speak here before she returns home. I think she's from Florida, Twyla?
Yes.
So she's got a lot of traveling. She speaks all over the country and is an excellent presenter. We hope you can come to hear that. Gary, would you come forward and tell us something here? Don Brown, would you mind offering a prayer for us? All right.
Join me in prayer, please. Father, we just come before you right now in Jesus' name. Father, we just want to lift this meeting up to you. Father, we thank you for who you are, the great I am, Almighty God. We appreciate you, Lord, all the things you do for us, the big things and the little things. We appreciate it. Father, as we lift this meeting up to you tonight, we pray, Father, that this meeting be according to your will, everything said and done. Father, will just, again, be according to your will. And again, Father, we're going to be careful to give you the glory, the honor, and the praise. And thank you, Father, for each and every one that's come out tonight. In Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen.
We want to thank all of you for your prayers, your donations, your help for the Stone family and all the other families. Yes, we've got Danny now with challenges, so there's been a lot of sickness and illness in the community, so we appreciate that. Gary, are you ready? Come on over here. And after Gary, Mr. Kent Feldman, Kara. It's Kara near right here. If he'll turn over, he'll take the time, he'll introduce their team, and they can kind of give us their presentation of it.
Everybody here okay? We need everybody here okay? Okay. I want to be real brief. This is kind of a personal statement that I want to make. Everybody knows what happened to Debbie a month ago on the stroke that she had, and I want everybody to know that she's at home, she's doing better, and she misses all of you tremendously. There's no way in the world that she or I, either one, have the words to tell you how much we appreciate what this community has done in the nature of prayers, love offerings, donations, and things like that. It's just been so tremendous that I just don't have the words to thank you for it. This community is so special. The way I've seen it over and over and over again come together in the need of the people, and it's unbelievable what this community can do and what they will do. And that kind of brings me to the subject matter of tonight. We got to take care of this community, folks. I'll tell you what, we have seen so many things that's attacked. We've been under attack in so many ways. I'm a fourth generation here, and both of my parents graduated here at the Weed School. I graduated, and all my siblings graduated at the Weed School. And in the past years, we've seen so many things happen that this really hurt the community, like when the spotted owl came. We had to give him some room. That took all of the families out and closed our school. Okay? We see you guys come together and fight when the Postal Service wanted to take the post office away. And anything that happens, we have to be wise. We do not want to lose what we have in this community. It's very, very, very special. Now, I'm not saying that what these nice ladies and gentlemen are going to speak to you about is wrong. The only thing that I'm saying is ask the questions. Make sure that we make the right decisions for our community and for our families that live here. I'm sure that they're going to tell you about the nuclear waste and that it's not harmful, it's not going to hurt anything, it's not going to get into the groundwater and all of that, and I hope that's true. If it does 10 years down the road, it's too late, okay? And I've heard that there's been some other states that said, no, you can't do it there. We need to know why, you know, that you can't do it there, why can you do it here? Okay, nuclear waste is an important thing, and we just need to ask the appropriate questions and find out what it's going to do. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people make a lot of money over this deal, but we have to take care of our community. Until you've been in the situation that I'm in, you don't really realize what it means. And that's all I've got. I mainly wanted to give you an update on Debbie, tell you that she's doing good, she misses you, and how much we appreciate your offerings and your donations and your prayers and all of that. She misses you. It's going to be a while before she gets back to the post office because she's got a ways to go yet. But anyway, with that, I'm going to turn it over to
My name is Bruce Graneski. I'm part of the project team here, and thank you for those introductory remarks. Yes, ask questions. Ask lots of questions. That's why we're here. This is the third night in a row we've had community meetings. This is a week that is sandwiched in between months of conversations and meetings with groups and people, and we're going to continue to do that as long as we're involved in this project. So, welcome. It's great to see so many people here. It's exactly what we want. And I just want to talk a little bit about what's going to happen today and so kind of what our goals and objectives are. And then also some of the ground rules I think that'll make this public meeting work as well as possible. So we have a couple of objectives here today. The first is we want to provide factual information about this project. There is misinformation out there. We want to correct the record and make sure people have the facts about this project so they can make their decisions based on the facts. So that's our first objective. The second objective we have tonight is we want to make sure that there's a respectful exchange of ideas and opinions. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. We want to let everybody who wants to express their opinion about this project, whether for or against, to have that opportunity and to have it in a respectful way where those opinions are matter. They matter to us. And so, we'd ask people to refrain from booing or cheering or anything that might cause someone to feel like their opinion was, different than someone else's. We have a lot of people here tonight and a lot of people who have signed up to speak. So we're going to start with a presentation of the project from the project team. They'll introduce themselves. Then we're going to have a public comment period. And we're going to ask folks to limit their public comments to 3 minutes just to start with, because so many people want to speak, and then if we have more time, we can extend that. Once we're done with the public comment period, then we're going to take questions. And so I'll ask people to raise their hands if they have some questions. We'll write them down, and then we're going to recess for a few minutes, and we're going to review the questions. And then we're going to come back, and for those of you that can stay, and we hope you all can, we're going to answer those questions to the best of our ability. So that's what's going to happen tonight, and again, thank you for being here. We look forward to a respectful exchange of ideas and opinions. We look forward to talking about this project, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ken Philman, the CEO of Terraneer.
Thanks, Bruce. I really appreciate the opening remarks. I live in a rural community too, and we want to protect our way of life. Our area was settled in a little bit earlier than yours, the early 1700s, and my house was built in 1818. And we like to keep our space open, and the people who live in our area are dedicated to open space and protection of water quality and the same kind of things that you're concerned about. You live in a beautiful area, you want to protect it, I get it. I really get it. What we're here to talk to you about tonight is what this project is and what this project isn't. And the reason we're doing this is to allay the fears associated with the idea that the speculation that this is going to be a nuclear waste site. It's not. If we wanted to, we could just get a permit from the state engineer's office and go out and start drilling and not tell you anything about it. But we haven't taken that approach because that would create even more fear and concern about what the heck we were doing. So the point of our public meetings, the point of reaching out to you, the point of putting up our website is to let you know exactly what we're doing and to try and explain to you why it is that this is a research project. This is a world-class research project. This type of drilling and this type of research has never been done anywhere in the world. And I was at a meeting last week with people from England and Finland and Sweden and Germany and Korea, and they're all keenly interested in the research that could be done here. All three New Mexico universities are on this team. They're keenly interested in the research that can be done here. One of our university partners said that the samples they get from this borehole are more rare than trying to find a meteorite. So just to give you an indication of the importance and the unusual nature of the investigations we'll be doing here. We're planning on drilling a borehole that's going to be about 5,000 meters deep, about a little over 3 miles, and it's got to be very straight. It's got to be 7.5 inches at the bottom. It's got to be no more than 100 meters off the perpendicular at the bottom, and it's also got to be straight all the way down. You can't have a lot of variations in it. So it's a real challenge for drilling technology. And after that, we'll be working with Sandia National Laboratories to work on the characterization of the borehole. But that's the nature of what we're doing here. And everything that we've got, in all the plans we've got, mitigate against there being waste at this site. There's our contract forbids it. The lease with our landowner forbids it. Our landowner has been on his property, not personally, but his family, has been on his property since 1865. His son's taking it over, and other generations of his family after that. He's not interested in having waste on his property. He's not going to allow waste on his property. But he is interested in scientific research and furthering research on the use of his property for that. So we'll get more into the siting aspects of this and the details of it as we go through the meeting. But kind of just wanted to set the framework up front about why the heck it is we're here. And trying to reach out to you and let you know what we're doing. So, Rick? Okay, that's me. I'm CEO. It's a highfalutin title, but we're a real small company. Somebody's got to be CEO, I guess. And our team, we can introduce ourselves. Can we do without a mic?
I think I can be loud enough that you can hear me. Yeah, can everyone hear me? Okay. My name's Katie Roberts. I'm the public outreach liaison for this project. I lived in New Mexico for about 13 years now. I've worked for the New Mexico Environment Department for at least 9 of those. And I also lived up at Los Alamos, and I'm very happy that I'm here tonight to speak to all of you.
I'm Peter Graham. I'm from Los Alamos, New Mexico. I'm the program manager for our deep borehole project team, and I'll have primary responsibility for the integration of our project and the technical execution of the project.
I'm Bruce Korneski with Gallatin Public Affairs, and my company handles the public communications and media aspects of the project, and that's my role.
My name is Eric Blade. I live up in Albuquerque. I'll be conducting and coordinating the university work and also all the testing that's going to go on down at the borehole. geologist, started in 1972 with Kirby mining uranium. She was based in Wyoming. You know that? Get around. But, so that was a long time ago. Now I'm involved in this. That was my first job, and it's most likely to be my final job, and I'll retire. But I think it's important to do some research so that somewhere in this country we have a safe place to store some of the things we've created intentionally and unintentionally. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Let's go on the next slide. Advisory board members. Okay, so because of the importance of this project and the need to make sure we understood what Sandia's requirements were and what DOE's requirements are, we wanted to bring a couple of very senior members onto our team who have had a lot of experience with Department of Energy projects and Department of Energy research. So I'd like to introduce Pete Lyons and Margaret Chu.
Thanks, Ken. I'm Pete Lyons. I started at Los Alamos in the late 1960s and spent more than 30 years at Los Alamos in a lot of different areas. I went back in 1997 to help Senator Domenici as his science advisor, supposedly for 1 year, but we hit it off kind of well, and I spent 8 years with Senator Domenici as his science advisor, and was involved in projects just all over the state. After that, I was nominated by President Bush to a term on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, responsible for safety across the country of anything nuclear. It was certainly a fascinating experience. I thought I was retiring at the end of that term, but I got another phone call asking if I'd come over to the Department of Energy, and I was nominated to be the Assistant Secretary for Nuclear Energy. I retired from that job in June of 2015 and retired to Golden, Colorado. In that last job, I laid the foundation for the Deep Borehole Research Program. It's certainly important to me from a research standpoint. It's great research. It'll be very useful to the state, but you'll hear a lot more about that later. In any case, coming in here, boy, you folks live in a gorgeous part of the world, and really enjoyed the drive in here, and looking forward to this evening. Margaret?
Hi, my name is Margaret Chu. I'm very pleased to be here. I've lived most of my life in New Mexico. I worked for 22 years at Sandia National Laboratories in Albuquerque, working mostly on waste management projects and an environmental project. And when I was at Sandia Labs, I was part of the team that successfully opened the WIP project. And later on, I was appointed by President Bush to go to Washington, D.C. to lead the Yucca Mountain Repository Program. And now I'm a part-time private consultant, but I'm also part-time on U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission's Advisory Committee of Reactor Safety. I'm also on National Academy of Sciences, Board of Nuclear Studies, and Radiation Effect. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Just want to let you know that at our other meetings, we did have representatives from the New Mexico universities. They weren't able to be here tonight, but all three of the major New Mexico universities are on our team. They've helped us to select the site. They've helped us to lay out what our approach to the project is, and they're very important and integral to the research. They're also very excited about the research, both for the professors as individuals getting involved, and also to provide an opportunity for research for their graduate students. So, next, Rick. So I just wanted to frame this up by letting you know that borehole disposal technology is certainly not the only thing the DOE is looking at in terms of waste disposal. They're looking at reopening Yucca Mountain. The federal budget just came out today, and they do have some money in there for restarting Yucca Mountain. They're looking at the potential for expanding the waste that could be disposed in WIP. And they're looking at 3 other disposal technologies. They're looking at disposal in mine and disposal in salt, in clay, and bedrock. And they want to look at deep borehole. Deep borehole is the least understood of all of them because there just previously hadn't been the drilling or characterization technology to attempt to do this. And so they want to do some basic research. That's what they're doing. The other thing I'd like to note about this slide is there's a lot of misunderstanding about the waste forms that might be used in a project like this, wherever it is. There's no waste forms in this project, but we're going to show you a map later on that shows you that the crystalline basement rock that is what's really of interest here is common to about 40% of the United States. And what they're looking for is what's in that rock, not what's above that rock. So we're a couple thousand meters down before we hit that rock. But if there were any ways to be disposed in a borehole ever, if the technology works, it would not be commercial nuclear waste. So it's not the volumes of waste that you're hearing about going to Yucca Mountain. It would be waste that were generated as a result of the nuclear weapons program. And it's a very small, unique waste forms. So for whatever that's worth, it's not the huge amount of waste that would be headed to Yucca. But it's not headed to Ventura County anyway. So Peter, do you want to describe the project?
So I was just going to describe a little bit more details about what the project actually is. And Ken gave a brief overview that we're going to attempt to drill a 5-kilometer deep borehole with a final completion diameter of 8.5 inches. The borehole is very unique from the point of view that it must be extremely straight. So there have been boreholes drilled to this kind of depth with this kind of completion diameter in a few locations previously, even into crystalline rock. But our main objective is to be able to demonstrate the ability to drill a very, very straight borehole. And so that's number one. So even to do that, just to get started, we need to test out the drilling methods and demonstrate that that can be achieved. Once we achieve the target depth, then our next objective is to try to characterize the geology at this depth. The kinds of things that we'll be looking for are the presence of fluids, if there are any fluids at this depth. Are there fractures at this depth? And if there are fluids present, how are they moving? What's the fluid behavior at this kind of depth? And so even getting that kind of data back from this borehole at 5 kilometers of depth is very challenging. And we don't even know what test methods are going to be appropriate to collect the data that we need to characterize the subsurface. So part of the project is just simply to develop the testing methods that we need to use, or that we could use to evaluate this technology. The other thing that's shown on this slide is a cartoon of what our deep borehole looks like a little bit. And this, the cartoon's important because we've heard a lot of concern about the potential to impact groundwater through the drilling process. The cartoon shows a series of, in the upper third of the drawing, there's, it shows this telescoping down in sizes of the borehole. And that each telescoping down in size, that each reduction in drilling size, there's we will set a string of steel casing. The objective of that casing is to stabilize the borehole and to isolate the groundwater from the borehole. That steel casing will be cemented in place, and once the cement seal is set, we'll run a variety of geophysical tests to ensure the integrity of the seal. And we have really high confidence that this will effectively isolate the groundwater from the borehole. This approach, this methodology is a tried and true method developed in the oil field. It's used routinely in oil field drilling. So we have a really high confidence that this will work. Another thing that's important to note at the site, there's a well that was drilled very close to where we want to drill the test hole. And that borehole was drilled at about 4,000 feet, and water persisted to a depth of about 1,000 feet. And we'll be going many, many times deeper than that into the deeper crystalline basement rock. Next slide, please, Rick. So where is our project site, in fact? So this map here showed the faint green area, that's Otero County. The big green dot in the center is Alamogordo. The property that we're going to, that we'd like to do the project on is private ranch land owned by Greg Duggar. That's depicted here in this red blob at the very bottom of the map. And our drill site that we'd like to do is right in the center of that red outlined area. It's about 25 miles due north of Del City, Texas. So this site is why we chose this site because we believe it has the appropriate geology for conducting the tests in, that it's a representative geology, and it's very important for us. The other thing is we have a very willing landowner. He would like to have this project conducted on his property. This site also has an ample water supply to support the project and support the drilling, as well as living on the property while we do the drilling and testing. And it's also actually, people believe this site to be very remote, and in some ways it is, but it's also actually fairly close to the oil field infrastructure of the Permian Basin, which is important to support the project. It's another really beneficial feature of the site. And finally, it's flat and accessible for us. So we think it really meets a lot of criteria that will ease the project.
Thanks, Peter. So, unfortunately, I'm not as skilled as my colleagues, and I need notes, because otherwise I'll get real nervous. So, bear with me. But I get to talk to you a little bit about the benefits to Otero County for this project. We're talking about, as you've heard, about research, and so the educational benefits are pretty profound here. We also have some economic benefits, so I'm going to take you through that a little bit. So the project is going to allow for enduring research opportunities for graduate, undergraduate, and even doctoral students, and in some cases, the professors that you were introduced to on the slides, their own professional research, and so they're pretty excited about this. There are also going to be opportunities in the county and local schools for science, technology, engineering, and math education, or STEM education. And that's actually a key part of the contract that we have with the Department of Energy. It actually calls out STEM education opportunities. We're also estimating that there's going to be about $3 to $4 million in subcontracting work available for local vendors in Otero County. And that's pretty wide-ranging, actually. So there's going to be construction, clearly at the site, all of the infrastructure that we're going to need, so water, septic. We're even going to need catering staff, because all of the staff that are going to be out there will be living on the property. So we're going to need all of those services, and we intend to try and get them all from Otero County if possible. And finally, we think that we're going to generate about 20 to 25 jobs as a result of the project, and mainly in the area of drilling support. So we're going to need drilling assistance and things of that nature. Slide, Rick. So I'm going to switch gears slightly to discuss really our commitment to safety, quality, and environmental protection for this project and at this project site. Our number one priority is a safe research site, and we want to make sure we preserve the local environment and the quality of life in Otero County. We're going to be conducting a National Environmental Protection Act, or a NEPA, environmental assessment, and that's simply to ensure that there are no adverse impacts. We don't believe that there will be as a result of this project. And one of the other reasons that this site was selected is there are no sensitive land uses here, no preserves on Mr. Duggar's property, no wetlands at this site. So one less thing to worry about. We're going to be working with all of the applicable regulatory agencies. So in this case, that means the Office of State Engineer. There are going to be several bureaus, probably in the New Mexico Environment Department, that we'll need to work with to make sure that we meet all of those requirements. And I think Ken usually likes to do this slide, but I get to do it this time. So, Terranir PMC has a really outstanding, proven safety record. They have 0 accidents, no OSHA recordable injuries in the last 5 years, No injuries or lost time for any of the deep drilling of groundwater wells up in Los Alamos, ever. And they really do, as Peter was alluding to, demonstrated that ability to successfully seal off drinking water supplies. So your groundwater will be protected. Next slide. But related to that commitment to safety, we really do have a commitment to you to provide factual, transparent communications. We want to make sure you have the correct information and that you're kept up to date on all of the big project developments. That is also a key part of our contract with the Department of Energy. And as you can see from this slide, we've presented at several meetings over the past month, the county commission meetings, these public meetings, the city commission, the local ranchers that have property adjacent to Mr. Duggar. But I would like to put in a pitch that I think we want to try and reach as many people as we possibly can and educate them, especially if they have lots of questions. So if you have other venues that you would like us to present at or other groups you think would be interested, please come find me afterwards and let me know. The website that we have for the project is now live, and we're going to show you that URL at the end of the presentation, but it is www.saltbasinproject.com. Lots of information on the website. You can actually see our contract on the website. You can sign a petition if you happen to be in favor of the project. You also have the ability to send us comments on the website, so I highly encourage you to go visit it and check it out. But this isn't a one-time deal. And we're going to talk about the schedule of the project a little bit later in the presentation, but we're going to continue to communicate with you for the entire length of the project. This isn't, we're coming here once and that's it. You will continue to see us. Hopefully you don't get totally sick of me, because it's probably going to be me that you see the most. And the final thing on this slide that I wanted to highlight was that Terranir PMC has offered to pay for independent oversight of this project that would actually ultimately report back to the Otero County Commission. We haven't worked out all the details of what that might be yet. It could be a company, it could be an individual, but we wanted to highlight the fact that we understand that there are some trust issues, and I'm going to get to that next slide in a minute, but so we wanted to be able to provide that function or that service. Next slide. Oh, you're already up there. Okay. So I wanted to kind of go through some of the top questions that we've gotten so far about this project. And the first one up there, Peter alluded to a little bit already, but is your drinking water or your groundwater going to be impacted as a result of this project? The answer is no. We intend to seal off the groundwater or your drinking water so it's protected. It will not be impacted. Secondly, will nuclear waste be stored up or disposed in this borehole? No. Very simple answer. No, it will not. And third, what kind of assurances can we give you that that waste will not be put in that borehole? And Mr. Philman already alluded to this in his opening remarks, but our contract with the Department of Energy prohibits waste going in the hole. The lease with the landowner, with Mr. Duggar, also prohibits waste going in that hole. And we have been trying to work with the county and the DOE to formulate an MOA, or a Memorandum of Agreement, that would also prohibit waste going in that hole. Okay, moving on to one of the primary concerns that we've been hearing over the last month and a half or 2 months. Very, very clear. I hear you loud and clear. Severe, significant mistrust of the federal government. It's well-founded. It's well-founded here. And I've been hearing lots of it, and I completely understand why that fear is there. I think what we wanted to point out here is that we're taking a very different approach. We are coming to talk to you about this project well ahead of any fieldwork being conducted. Fieldwork isn't scheduled to begin a year from now. We want to make sure, as I said earlier, that you have the information that you need. We didn't want you to be surprised, because I think that looks a lot more suspicious if we come in, start drilling, and then you find out about it after the fact. So we wanted to be very clear about that upfront communication. Terraneer, I think I already talked about the independent oversight, so I'm going to skip that, but if people have questions about it, happy to answer those. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lyons to talk about our next concern that we've been hearing so often.
Thanks, Katie. I was asked to talk a little bit about what would have to happen if there ever were to be a deep borehole disposal program anywhere in the country. You've already heard that about 40% of the country has suitable geology. So it's a very, very broad section of the country that could be considered. But what would have to happen for that project to move ahead? Well, first, the DOE has got to find that this disposal approach is feasible. That's what this research is about. It may say it's feasible, it may say it isn't feasible. But if it is feasible, then the department, the government, would have to assess the desirability of this disposal technique for some classes of waste over all the other types of disposal that are also possibilities that Ken outlined. But let's say that the decision was made to proceed with waste disposal in a deep borehole. At that point, there would be an RFP, a request for proposals, issued by the government. And communities and states would consider at that point if they wanted to respond, if they wanted to be considered for that site. In order to be considered, they'd have to comply with what's come to be called the consent-based process. There's been a lot of effort within the department over the last few years to try to understand better what a consent-based process is and isn't. But it would have to involve agreement with the local community and agreement with the state. And they would have to agree with the federal government that they are willing to serve as a site for waste disposal. The government would collect whatever communities and states said they wanted to be considered, and they would make a decision as to where to proceed. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the consent-based process and what that means for the public's role in that. And just as a practical matter, the government doesn't want to repeat, I would say, the fiasco that's gone on at Yucca Mountain. And if any of you have followed Yucca Mountain over a lot of years, you know that Yucca Mountain there was some research started early in the 1980s, but there was legislation passed in 1987 that mandated that Yucca Mountain would be the sole repository for commercial waste in the United States. Nevada never was asked, never agreed. They've fought this ever since. And they've fought it very, very successfully. And the government has learned their lesson, that when you try to cram something like this down the throat of a state that doesn't want it, you're in for an incredible number of delays and costs. There's been probably 10 billion or so invested, that's billion, invested in the research on Yucca Mountain. But what's more important is that the damages that the federal government is liable for because Yucca Mountain has not moved ahead and was not opened on time are estimated to be between $20 and $30 billion. And that's money from all of us. The government has learned their lesson, that public opinion matters, that you need to have a consent basis if you're going to move ahead with a facility like this. And again, we're talking hypothetically in the future if a deep borehole disposal program were to move ahead. Now, I've just talked about the importance of public opinion and the ways in which the community and the state would influence whether they were ever considered for such a disposal site. There's also a long regulatory process. And Margaret's going to talk a little more to that.
One of the things I want to communicate with people here is better. One of the things I want to communicate with the people here is to let you know that to actually develop a real disposal facility anywhere, any kind of disposal facility anywhere in the U.S. involves a very long, rigorous, and complex process. The process consists of development of legal and regulatory requirements and standards, and it takes years, decades of scientific studies that are comprehensive and rigorous on every aspect of the disposal facility and the site. And it also includes submittal of license application to the appropriate regulatory agency, and then the review, very rigorous review by the regulator. And in addition, you have to obtain environmental permits, transportation permits, and then you have to get permits from the state, and so on and so forth. And for example, for the Yucca Mountain project, the regulatory process started in 1982, and now it's been 35 years, and then we're far from over. And then for the WIP repository program, the legislative process started in 1979, and it was well into the 1990s that the process was finally complete. And then I know some of the people have questions whether nuclear materials will be brought to these boreholes. I can assure you, no, because it's illegal to all of a sudden bring in nuclear waste into somewhere. It has to go through a long process like Dr. Lyons and I just described to you. And what we're doing here is really assessing the feasibility of this technology. You know, we keep telling people this because we don't even know it really works. Let me give you a couple minutes of, this all started in 1956. The National Academy of Sciences, one of the most prestigious independent research organization for the country, they started thinking about what to do with nuclear waste. This was 1956. They think of all these different approaches. Actually, as a result of that, we have WIP and Yucca Mountain. It's all because of that study. In one of the technology, they say it's possible is deep borehole. They say it's so deep and then can provide very good permanent isolation of the radioactive material. But they say, it was 1956, they said, we don't have the drilling technology, okay? But it would be good to periodically revisit this concept, see if it's feasible. And that's what we're doing. A lot of people believe the technology is probably mature. Let's test the concept. So this is what this project will say. Does it work? Can we drill to the depth? Can we collect the data? Can we test all these properties we need to test down so deep? Okay? Can we put stuff down there so deep without dropping them? You know, all these questions, and that's what the project is about. So I want to assure you, this is a science program, and it's not a nuclear waste disposal facility. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Margaret. I just wanted to wrap up with a couple of things. People are interested in the schedule. This is a phased award here, so DOE has awarded 4 contracts. There are 4 different sites, 4 different contractors that are under consideration to do this research. And
Move away from the back.
oh, I can't hear the feedback. Look, I was in a band in the 60s. I'm used to feedback anyway. So the first step here is the public outreach, and that's sort of a misnomer. This is really the initial public outreach. This is the initial education of the community of what's going on with this project, because there's going to be public communication throughout the life of this project. Every time we get to a major milestone in the project, whether it's we're getting a permit, or we're doing the work plans, or we're starting to build out the site, or we're starting the drilling, or we get to a point in drilling the initial borehole, whatever the major milestones are, we're going to be reaching out with meetings, updating our website, and letting folks know what's going on with the project. So right now we're in the initial outreach phase. I'm expecting that April-May timeframe will move forward into permitting and the initial work planning process, where we'll be working hand in glove with Sandia National Laboratory to develop some very detailed, complicated work plans, not only for the drilling, but for the testing. I mean, we may have to develop new testing procedures. We may have to do actually research for the testing for the research that we're doing. So there's a lot to work through, and that's why it's going to take from approximately May through November to get all the work planning together. At that point, DOE will make a decision based on the site conditions, the quality of the contractor team, the cost, and the level of public partnering, really is what we're looking for on the project. And they'll decide which site they're going to finally go ahead with. And so we're guesstimating that it's going to be January timeframe before we start building out a site. So I guess in closing, I just want to re-mention a couple of things. That just because this is a good site for research doesn't mean it's a good site for disposal. And we have a lot of folks speculating that, of course, if research is done here, it's ideal for disposal. Just not the fact. And there's a couple of things that mitigate against that. If we're just drilling a couple of boreholes through this aquifer that we know we can seal off, we're not putting the aquifer at risk. But think about this. If somebody wanted to put a disposal site at this facility, with the importance of that aquifer, wouldn't that be a huge mitigating factor against it? It would be. And you would have tremendous power if you didn't want to see that project happen. So I think, I'd like you to think about that and realize that, what we're talking about here is a research project. We're presenting you with what the facts are of our contract, what the facts are of our lease, what the facts are of the plans that Sandia and DOE have for the project. There's a lot of speculation and hypothetical thinking about what could happen after that. And we're going to hear some questions about that. We're happy to answer that. We understand your concerns. We get it. We know about the jumping mouse. We know about the McGregor Range. We know about Forest Service not coordinating with the county commissioners and others on what gets done here. But I'll bet you that you've never had a contractor come out starting years ahead of a project and sitting down with you and talking with you about it. So I think we're taking a different approach. And with that, we have a website that's up. Can you put up the website there? That's the website. We're putting a lot of information on it. Our full contract is on there. This PowerPoint presentation will be on there. The answers to frequently asked questions will be on there. And we're adding to those questions continually to make sure we're trying to address all of the concerns and interests of the community. So I encourage you to check out that website. This is our third public meeting, and I understand that a lot of folks who come to these meetings are really concerned, and probably there's potential for a higher percentage of folks who might be opposed to the project. But last night in Tiburon, we talked to quite a few people who are also interested and supportive of the project. So I encourage you to go on the website, look at it and let us know what you think about the project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bruce to handle the question and answer session.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks, everybody. Rick, I'm going to ask you to come up and help me with this part of the process. I have a list of people that have signed up to make a public comment. We're going to go through that list, and I'm going to call your name out, and Rick will come to your seat with the microphone. I have a loud voice, so I can talk without the microphone. And then once we get through the folks that have signed up, if there's anybody who has decided after hearing the presentation that they would like to make a comment, we want to give you that opportunity as well. And then we'll take some questions, as I said, and we'll recess and we'll look at those questions. We'll come back and we'll answer those. Before we get started, though, I do hope that 3 things really came through in this presentation. One is, this is a research project and a research project only. We're trying to see if this technology works. It's never been done before. 2 is, no nuclear waste will be stored at this site or disposed of this site. It's against our contract. And 3 is, there's some pretty significant scientific and economic benefits that will come to Otero County as a result of this research project. So with that, I'm going to get started with our list. I'll be our timekeeper here. Again, I want to ask folks if they could stay to 3 minutes in their comments so everyone has a chance to speak. And we're going to start with Marvin Samford.
What makes this site so special? What makes this site so special? I think it's salt.
Can you give him the microphone?
I think it's salt.
So if you have some questions, that's great. We'll take questions afterwards.
This is a question.
Okay.
Why can't you go back to WIP and finish what you got started down there?
We want to hear you. It's okay. It's okay. Just hold it up. Hold the microphone.
Hold it up. Come on, Marvin. We can't hear you.
What makes this site so special? Why don't you go out to WIP? They're only using the south side. I worked at WIP. They're only using the south side of the towers and everything that you see on the surface. Why don't you go to the north of that and work that country? There's salt there.
Okay, we'll take that question and we'll answer that when we come back for the question and answer period.
And, well, what's to stop the next contractor, y'all are mature people, we're not going to be here long. What's to stop the next bunch to go in there after the holes are poked? Are y'all going to pull your casing out of the ground and fill it back up with dirt or the material that went back in it? Or what are you going to do with it? Leave it there for the next generation to maybe do something with it?
Okay, great question. We'll take that one too, and because we have some answers to that, and we'll provide that in the Q&A session. Do you have any other comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, I got a comment about the OSHA deal. OSHA's on the surface. That's your safety people on the surface. MSHA is underground. You say you have a perfect record of OSHA on the surface. What about MSHA underground? What's your safety record on all that?
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll take that question as well, and we'll answer it when we come back to answer the questions. Thank you. Vicki Anderson.
Anderson.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't read your name.
You know, I'm just, I don't know what to say about all this. First of all, I don't feel like you're being truthful to us. I think we're just being snowed. You know, we're all intelligent people here. We can read. And you know, the thing with the education deal, yeah, I know you bought off the universities, and they need the money desperately. And you know, and the state engineer comment, no, you just can't come in here and drill a hole. State engineer makes us do all the paperwork, and we can't just do that, and you can't either. And another thing, as far as nature, you can't guarantee that the ground's going to be stable there and that's not going to contaminate that water and that water goes down. That is a big aquifer there. And El Paso's even thought about tapping into that for the future. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have Adrian. I hope that's right. Adrian. Thank you.
I'm a geophysicist in the oil industry, so I drill offshore, and mostly in Angola and Gulf of Mexico. Sorry. And I do live in the community and have kids. I want to have several comments on subsurface containment when we talk about Macondo and we look at all the issues there. But there have been multiple questions on whether the upper 2 kilometer casing can be successfully cemented. We've seen many issues of very difficult wells having issues with the top 2 kilometers. And whether cesium is also on the list of something that could possibly go into this deep borehole disposal system, wherever it ends up being. And whether the cesium or anything else that's in that wellbore can be contained when your top 2 kilometers of pipe can't actually be fully cemented and protected against the groundwater. We know from Macondo that it's very difficult to cement long strings of large diameter pipe. CBL logs are difficult to interpret. Generally, they run in the center of the wellbore, eccentered, to find top cement, but not for evaluating seal all the way down the casing. And we also see that in my line of work, probable loss of circulation zones behind that pipe due to fractures and weakening of the rocks behind it. And we also know that Carlsbad Caverns is the largest sulfuric acid dissolution feature yet discovered in the world, and we do have karsting. So in the upper 2 kilometers, we're looking at karsting and possible fracturing due to the multiple overprints of structural geology that's happened. And we also know that, like other people have mentioned, there is significant lateral groundwater flow. New Mexico Tech has done a great groundwater study. I recommend that you guys look into that. It definitely shows the whole region, and our source for that aquifer is up here. So, sorry for rambling on.
No, thank you very much for your time.
I've been up for a while.
Thank you very much. John Bell.
I appreciate the questions that were just asked. I spent 30 years in the oil business down in the Permian Basin, so I'm very familiar with that, and I certainly know that when you get to drilling over there close to Carlsbad, okay, let me get away from that. We shouldn't stand in front of where I was just standing over there in front of those microphones because they bounce it back. Anyway, my concern was with that movement of flow of water, the Capitan Reef runs from basically the Guadalupe runs all the way down through into the Hobbs area, down Eunice, Jal, Kermit. I lived in Kermit for 30 years, down Monahans all the way to Fort Stockton. Then it comes on the west side, it comes around here and heads towards El Paso there, close to Del City. So my concern was about the water and the movement of that water and the difficulty of drilling those wells through that, through the Capitan Reef formation. I've done quite a bit of work in the Capitan Reef there in that creek area, and it was really challenging. So I know that there's going to be some challenges there when you really do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, those are some good questions that we'll ask them. All right. Anita Self. Anita?
Where's Anita? She's right here. I'm Anita Self. I was the senior occupational health nurse at the WIP project for 21 years until about 5 or 6 years ago. I came to this meeting tonight because I have a place up here. I have an investment in this too. I am going to say I'm not pro, I'm not against. I came this to learn what it is. I'm going to tell you guys, you've done a good presentation, but I would feel much better about this whole project. You keep talking about it being pure research. All you're going to do is dig a hole, see how it goes, a hole, as my husband points out, to see how it goes. I would feel much better about this if I had not gotten online and read Sandia National Labs paper on it, if I had not seen DOE mixed in with this. Let me tell you just that I don't have a great deal of trust in the Department of Energy, having worked with them and their safety issues, and knowing, you know, the quiet being pushed to say this. You were saying 0 recordables, no accidents, and I don't want to use the word bull, whatever, but that's very difficult to obtain, and it doesn't make my level of confidence go up a great deal when I'm being told we've never had, we said that at WIP too, and we had us a nice little release down there and a fire, and it was because, I don't want to use the word cover up is not the right word, but a culture of shut your mouth and do what we tell you to do. So I would feel much better if you guys could convince me that this truly is pure, unadulterated research. What happens when you find that this works, and it works well here? I know what will happen. I know that everybody will say, oh, New Mexico's already the dumping ground for nuclear waste. We take trash. We have hazardous material places everywhere. And we will be, and we're kind of low on the pecking order economically. We'll take whatever money we can get. We won't, but our legislators and everybody will. So, and I'm going to completely shift gears here and say, you mentioned the level of waste, the categorization of the waste that's going to go into this. In the question, when you answered, I've read on several sites, spent fuel rods, I've seen it. What are we looking at? Alpha, beta, gamma, what are we looking at? And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. All right. Bill Kaufman, you're up. Nice to see you again. Not yet, you haven't started talking.
I want to give some questions, guys. My name's Walt Kaufman. I live in Weed, between Weed and Pinion on Highway 24. And I've spoke at these meetings a couple of times. Just a couple of things. First, notice that our distinguished panel here does not have a DOE representative. No one from DOE is here to answer questions. What we have is a missing DOE. And so questions about what DOE is going to do in the future, for example, really can't be answered by these guys because they don't know. DOE is not here. This project's been pitched in other places around the United States. North Dakota, South Dakota, Quay County, here in New Mexico, have all received a pitch from the contractor, different contractors, same project. Every one of them has seen problems with this. And I've heard people allude to it, and I'm just going to say it. The elephant in the room is not this project, it's the follow-on project. They drill a hole, it costs them $35 million. They instrument it, they find out that the geology is perfect for nuclear waste disposal. Then they go through this process that was described here. It's a long process. But why would they go to Ohio or Texas when they have a hole right here in New Mexico that's proven to be good? And my experience is they're going to come here because we've shown them that this is the place to site this disposal site. And I heard some talk here about how difficult the process is, and I just want to say two things about that. One is President Obama did away with Yucca Mountain along with Harry Reid with just a stroke of the pen. He canceled it. Okay, and I know they're going to say, well, it's harder to do it than it is to get rid of it. Well, all they need is one accident at one of these laboratories because they can't get rid of this waste that's piling up. And suddenly you'll see all the politicos line up to do something quick to get rid of this waste. Where's that waste going when we've got a proven place right here in Otero County? So the politics of the thing is what's going to drive quick decision making. I'm sure these guys are, telling the true story. They're not planning to store nuclear waste in this hole, but these people are not DOE, and they do not speak for DOE, and they can't speak to what DOE is going to do next week or next year when this project brings in a successful hole. What's DOE going to do? How am I doing on time?
I'll extend for 30 seconds.
Okay. All right, so my concern is that, and I want to also say that this project, there's words like consent and community, and you know, it's mind-numbing because there's all these little terms. I'm going to use the word consent. You right now are involved in consent process. If you say to these guys by signing their sheets or raising your hand or whatever that you're in favor of this project, you're consenting to it. And furthermore, you've opened the door up for DOE to come in later and say, hey, these guys consented. You know, so when we bring in the waste, we've got an easier way to go. Thank you.
All right, Charles West.
Okay, I don't want to talk down to anybody, but I want to make sure I get a few science points out and onto the record. First of all, I do disagree that this is like the basement in 40% of the country. This area, 30 to 18 million years ago, there was a substantial event that caused crustal thinning, but more importantly, the brittle ductile transition in the crust around the salt basin shallowed by half the depth of the crust. And that meant that there were a very large number of these shallow angled normal faults where things just slip like this. Well, it got quiet for about 8 million years, and 10 million years ago we got the present topography of the Tularosa Basin and the Salt Basin, which is basically en echelon stepping parts of the Rio Grande Rift. And the problem with that is now you got cross-cutting faults. You've got a complicated basement that is not like basement up in Michigan, you know. Next, we have geothermal activity here that's been well evaluated on the McGregor Range. They're not really talking, that's a significant resource that the Army eventually will develop. That is right on one of these basin-bounding faults. There's another probable geothermal cell right by the salt basin. You're going to tap right into it. Third is, we heard about the sulfur problem, that we have the biggest sulfur dissolution structure in the world at Carlsbad. When that stuff hits steel, we get something called sulfide embrittlement. The problem with sulfide embrittlement is that casing doesn't hold. So you're saying that you got casing there, you intend to have it there for 20,000 years, but what happens when they don't make sour surface casing that's 20 inches in diameter? That's because the oil field doesn't deal with sour gas with 20-inch well bores. That casing will not hold. It's got to last. So, and the additional thing I'd make is that, you know, just because you cement something in now, that rock will not necessarily, that seal won't hold forever. That's because the processes of groundwater moving through changes the rock. You know, that's how we get caves. We see sinkholes. You guys drive by them. I drive by them. There's going to be sinkholes and everything. This stuff will not stay just the way it is, you know. And so when we clone something, we don't have a vision of geologic time. We have our own lives, and we live our lives, and we love each other, but we don't see what will put our children in the face. We don't know what this will be in 1,000 years. And we've got to picture, we've got to take a long view. That's all I have.
All right, that's all I have on the list. Now I want to ask, is there anyone in the audience? Hang on. Is there any? You're on the list, I'm sorry. I was going to say, if I missed anybody, I'm sorry. And also, if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak who haven't checked the box, we want to open it up to you. So you were on the list, I realize that, I apologize. Let's give you a chance to speak, and then we'll take the photos after that.
Yeah, I'm Tom Ward, and by way of background, I spent 22 years in the Army associated with nuclear weapons. I developed the transportation system for the WIP project. I must say I'm embarrassed that Steve Pierce is supporting this. I'm embarrassed that the DOE is coming up with a project like this when they have the website, a proven transportation system, all the infrastructure, even List 8. I submit that you can put a lot more waste in a drift, hundreds of barrels, than you can in a little borehole. Now, you mentioned water, the website, they bury the waste at 2,150 feet deep, with 1,000 feet of salt above it, 1,000 feet of salt below it. It's been there for millions of years. There is no water. So why are we even considering something else?
Thank you very much.
Oh, one more thing. I sort of feel like, and I think most of you will agree, this is a Phyllis Square. We have had a public outreach meeting. We've been to the Jumping Mouse, we've been to the post office meetings, and they just do as they please.
It's like, remember we said we're going to follow the ground rules. Let's follow the ground rules. Okay, ma'am, you want to? Oh.
Yes, very briefly. Hi, my name is Susan Salidas, lived here for about 20 years or so, and I trust all of you people with your good intentions, but time after time after time, I can point to things where people have come in from the outside, as far away as Washington, D.C., and as nearby as Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and they've had great intentions, but they don't live here and they don't have to deal with the problems that come with it. And there are several instances, if you've lived here for any length of time, I'm sure you realize some of them. I don't even talk about the spotted owl anymore, but there are lizards or whatever. So it's not that I don't trust you and your intentions, I just don't trust you because you're outsiders. And I don't believe that over a long time period, no matter how long it takes, there are resources that they won't give up, and trees don't vote. So somebody will come in here with power and money and essentially usurp us no matter what we decide. And that is a major fear on my part.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment that has, we have a gentleman back here.
I'm going to just stay seated. I'm relatively new to the community, about 2 years. I have a background in hard rock mining for 25 years. Ironically, I worked as a consultant for Kerr McGee in West Chicago, which I imagine you know what I'm talking about.
Well, it was a long time, 72.
70, well, we were working on it in 95.
Okay.
So, look up Kerr McGee, West Chicago. I can't talk about it. To me, this sounds like a kind of a, you say new technology, so it sounds like a guinea pig project, a little bit. And as far as distrust for the federal government or private corporations, to me, the line isn't skewed, it just isn't there anymore. I mean, they're all Raytheon, Sandia, Kodak, they're all work with the government.
Thank you. Okay, we have two more. This gentleman here and then this woman up here.
Yes, my name is Alton Mayer. I'm a newcomer to the community here. One question I have for you guys. When I got here, I bought a couple of geology books to kind of learn about this area. And one thing that struck my mind as I've listened to you all tonight is that this escarpment here is still uplifting about an inch or so every year, or I believe it's a year, I think, that I read. So how would that impact well casing and everything if the uplift is still moving and still rising? So I'd like y'all to address that if you would.
Thank you very much. And Rick, we have a woman up here who would like to make a comment. There, right here. Oh, sorry.
My name is Ellen Kaiser. Okay. Up or down. And I've been in the community for about 15 years or so. And I was at the county commissioners meeting when y'all presented there. I have a couple, actually I have a list of 21 questions, but I won't go there right now. I do have a question about the fact that, or a concern, I would say concern, and I haven't seen any hydrologist or anybody, seismologist, is that the right word, on the panel here. And we're talking about, some of these people are alluding to the fact that there might be some seismic issues that are to be concerned about. The other issue too that I'm concerned about is we were talking about the use of water, but I'm concerned about wastewater. Is wastewater going to be produced, and how is that wastewater going to be handled? If you're talking about disposing wastewater through injection system, that's been a big issue with fracking, in that injection of water back into the surface can cause, has been cited as a correlation with earthquakes. In Oklahoma, that's a big issue. Right now, they've closed down about 37 water injection systems as of January. That water injection system in Oklahoma has resulted in about a 500,000% increase in earthquakes in Oklahoma, equivalent to what California experiences. The other thing too is I'm concerned too that DOE isn't here. I'm concerned that the fact that if it is a feasible area, that they are going to develop it, and it's just not one hole that would be developed. When you're talking about something like this, I understand there will be an array of holes, not just one. So you're talking about not one hole, but a number of holes, and I read it somewhere around 19 holes to be developed if something like this was feasible. The other thing would be, of course, the seismic activity of the injection site. Oversight, I did hear you say that even though it is on private property, there would be followed the government regulations, even though it's on private property, and I don't understand the connection with that. I feel this whole process is being segmented as been alluded to already here, in that we're just talking about one component with one contractor doing research, but it's not pulling together the whole project. We don't have DOE here telling us what the project is really all about. Sandia Lab, in their report of August 2009, did discuss deep hole disposal of high-level radioactive waste, and there were a list of long questions because the technology has not been used. It's all been modeling, and there hasn't been any site per se that has used this technology. Also, I'm getting mixed messages in that we're being told that no nuclear waste would be used here, but that our legislators will support it.
Thank you very much. We have a gentleman here that raised his hand.
Thank you. I'm Jim Motts, and most of you around here, or several of you know me, because I've had a place up here since 1957, so I think I'm considered up here. Plus the fact I'm also a Carlsbad guy, and like Tom here, I've been with the WIP project actually from its inception. I'm serving from the legislature in New Mexico and on the WIP task force. So Senator Minicher, we were quite familiar with all the project when it came to Carlsbad. Let me make a difference between the Weed community and the Carlsbad community, since I've been in both of them. The Carlsbad community actually sought for the project. They went out and wanted the project. The project was going to be, they wanted the project because they wanted the benefit that came from it. Weed evidently doesn't want the project. So it's up to you, whatever you want to do on this, but I'm saying Carlsbad still had plenty of salt there, and if anything, they would probably, like Tom said here, if anything, they would probably open their arms for more waste to come in there. But that's all I've got to say about it. There is different. They asked for it, and whether you want it not here or not, that's up to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have one more hand here before we get to. Is there anyone else, this is last call, who would like to make a comment? We got two. So we have two left, and we're going to close it at that.
I'm Sylvia Bell, and I just think from what Mr. Ott said, I think that it just kind of needs to be laid out a little bit of what the weed community does consist of. In the sense of this, we've been hammered over and over and over again. And we've had very well-meaning, very sincere people stand before us and say, this will never happen, this will never impact you, this will never go, and it has over and over. I sat in a meeting with the state engineer, and we had the lawyer that was presenting the the project to them was concerning our water rights. He was a state Supreme Court judge that actually wrote the decision on the water rights, that the Forest Service did not have water rights. He was presenting that to him. We had a letter with 40 legislators, 45 if I'm not mistaken, that had signed against this, presented the whole thing to it. It went to the governor, and they sent a letter that said, please be more cooperative. And the Forest Service shut down completely the area, not only to the cattle grazers also, but also all recreation, all grazing. They put in pipe fences. They fenced us out. It said over and over, we'll have input. We'll be able to talk about this. It won't happen. We've seen the results of the input we have. Ask John Prather about the results of the input you have and what you really do. We've had that over and over again. Not only Jumping Mouse, but the hazmat, where they're trying, bring in helicopter landings and all the rest of it. And I said, please follow through with me. If I have a complaint, or if it's how is it being monitored? What are the restrictions on it? What will happen? Well, just go ahead and talk to the Forest Service. They'll take care of that for you. I'm sorry, I really know these people are sincere in their presentation with it. You're going to be gone. You're going to be gone, and the others that come in, where they've taken land from us, they have not paid for it. It's become eminent domain. They've put in rules and regulations and things that have overseen it over and over and over again. And I'm personally, like others have said, I'm tired of attending these meetings. Leave us alone, back out, find somewhere else that does want it, because I feel that pretty much the community does not want it. We want to be left alone.
We have one more comment.
I would like to ask a question of the panel, and I don't know if you're going to be willing to answer this or not, but I would like to know the kickback that the state's going to get from this, money-wise, the kickback that the county's going to get from this, money-wise, and I'd also like to know how much money the landowners get out of this deal. Now, for my comment. Folks, I don't think we can stop them from digging this hole because they've already got a contract with the landowner down there. I think that they're doing this for a consensus, maybe to see how the people of the community feel about it. But I don't know if the panel really knows the intentions behind the DOE and the deal that they've already struck with Santa Fe. I don't think that we can stop them from doing this, even if we decide that we don't want it here. They've already struck a deal with the landowner that we can't stop. They can then obtain the permits and everything that they need through Santa Fe. They don't need our consensus to do this. I understand that the panel is doing what they feel like they need to do here by coming to the community and letting people know and trying to educate us. On the other hand, I worry about what's behind the scenes that you don't even know about. What the DOE, what their true intentions is, and the deal that they've already struck with, like I said, our government here on a state level. I'm concerned about that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, we have another comment in back. We're gonna have to wrap it up after this one because we do want to get to the question period. So.
Well, this is partially a question.
Oh, perfect.
And I got it. I heard every one of you say, no nuclear, no nuclear. How are you going to successfully do your test if you don't try nuclear in it? That's my comment.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you, everybody. So, before we get to taking, we've had a lot of questions. We're going to ask for other questions. Before we get to this, so I want to take a little poll here, and I've done this the last couple of nights because the same question has come up at every meeting we have, which is, why is DOE not here? Why can't we ask them questions? If we had a DOE representative here tonight, and he told you, I promise you, there will never be nuclear material stored or disposed at this site, raise your hand if you would believe him. Okay. All right. So let's take, are there additional questions that people would like to pose to the panel that we need to answer? Raise your hand. Yes, sir.
Just one. You said this was waste associated with nuclear weapons.
Okay.
Correct?
Yes.
That's what WIP does.
Okay, is there a question there?
Why do you need another one?
Okay, great.
Exactly.
Is there
They're
a-
already putting it there by the drums.
Okay. Why do we need another nuclear waste? Okay. Other questions? That's good.
Yes, you're talking about the project as a research effort. And my question really is, research efforts don't usually have one data point. They only have multiple data points. So I'm assuming that you're going to successfully drill this hole, case it up, and you'll monitor it for a long period of time before you evaluate your data. Is that correct? Give me the time frame.
You want a little more definition on the actual research component of it?
Yeah. How long is that process actually going to be monitored before any formal reports?
Okay, great question. You have a question, sir?
Yes, I'd like to know, on that 40% of our country that's got about the same geology, how much is it populated, and how much is open, or how much can a person really look at for drilling?
Thank you. Good question. Question in the back.
Yes, we hear that the contract says that there will be no nuclear waste. How long does the contract last? And then what will the federal government do with it after that contract? How long will it take for them to condemn the land?
Okay, thank you. Question in the back.
How long is the piping and equipment to drill this hole currently available in the U.S., manufactured in the U.S., or are we talking about foreign technology?
Thank you. Questions? Other questions? Question here.
I want to know why we have a government that's however many $1 trillion in debt, and we're willing to throw another $30 million down a hole.
That's a pretty tough question for us to answer.
Since they're making money.
You have questions, sir?
Yeah, I'm interested in any scoping on the size of the drilling rig, because, you know, by my calculation, 20-inch pipe that's 7,000 feet long for the upper part of the hole would take up 500 kip drilling rig. I want to know if you envision using a rig that big.
Thank you. Did you have a question? If you have, are they written out? We'll take them. Well, we're not going to answer them tonight, but we'll. Are these from Walt? Well, they're not. Oh, they're separate. Okay. Well, I'll talk to you after this about how we'll address these, because I got 29 last night from Walt. So we're gonna get to all of these questions that are written out, but we don't have time to do it tonight.
Just one more question from me. How long has your company specifically been in business to be able to substantiate your facts that you put on the presentation up there for years of safety and your performance basically? How long is your exact company been in it?
Okay. All right. Other questions? Question, please. We have a bunch of people that want to ask questions. So if you don't have a question, we can talk to you afterwards.
If I put something in the borehole, will the item be encapsulated in salt where it can't move for millions of years ever?
Okay. I think I got that question. Yeah, another question?
Yes, that wasn't on my list. I have a question concerning private property. Obviously, this is going to go ahead because it's on private property. If a private property owner decides that it's okay to go ahead and make an array of boreholes and bury radioactive material on private property, is that something that's beyond the control of the community, the state, whatever, our input?
Good question.
I forgot to ask you a question once I turned it in. This contract, when you read it, says that the DOE may at its leisure drill as many holes as it wants to drill and any size hole it wants to drill on the site. So they could theoretically drill 20 or 50 holes in that site for a bit. And my question is, can you tell us why you're saying 2 holes or 1 or 2 holes and why the DOE has this under that?
All right. Any other questions in back here?
once they drill so far, it's out of the property owner's hands. He doesn't own those rights. And I don't know what the depth is, so he would have no say about it.
So what, do you have a question you want us to address about that, or?
What, the agreement that you entered into with the property owner, once they go beyond the point of where he has a say, I mean, so what is that point?
Okay, so, well, I think I get that question. How deep does property owners, property rights extend? Back here.
Okay, let me see if I can phrase this right. Okay, you're talking about dropping this borehole. We're going to have your case of steel as it goes to the aquifer. Listening to this lady up here who seems to really know her stuff. Okay, if you do not progress any further, you're going to pull out and you're going to say, and project will be back. Are you going to seal below the aquifer, above the aquifer, and how are you going to get that steel out of the aquifer?
Good questions. Good questions. Technical questions. Yes.
Yeah, can I expand on your question and say I would like to know what your plans on when you're done with the borehole? Are you going to temporarily abandon it? What, how are you going to isolate above the gridded extent that you're looking at? And are you going to hold it tight? Or is it going to be a permanent abandonment where you put it all the way?
All right.
I have a question.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question, and that is we have a lot of confined aquifers. You alluded to that when you put up the aquifer slide and everything, right? The problem, of course, with that is...
Is there a question here?
Yes. The problem with that is if there are pressure differences between different parts of the aquifer, because you've got a confined aquifer, you'll get crossflow. How are you going to get isolation where there are pressure differences between different levels of the aquifer?
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, this is about, these are a lot of questions, So we're going to ask you to be patient. We thought we would take 10 or 15 minutes to go through these questions. It could take longer, but we're going to do our best. So if you can hang around, great. If not, I want to let you know that on our website, we have a frequently asked questions section that we are going to continue to update as we get questions. And so you